Hi, I'm Thorsten from TS Systems, and in today's video I want to give you a quick overview over some of the settings you should do when you want to improve your RAW images. So I chose a RAW image from an EOS 6D here, and this image was shot at ISO 800 and it's a 20 megapixel file. So the first thing you should always look at is the white balance. The white balance is very important because normally you shoot with automatic white balance, which is fine. So this means your camera will determine the right settings for you, which is usually not bad. But if you know your actual light setting, it's maybe easier to choose one of the presets. Like I know that this image was shot in daylight, so I just choose daylight. And I will have much more accurate colors. In this case, the camera choose a little bit too cold colors here. Okay, so I will move on now. And what I usually use for raw images is a little bit of contrast, because normally raw images have less contrast than maybe pre-processed images from your camera. The setting I also use a lot of times is a little bit of recovery. So you can see I have some blown highlights here which are marked red right now. And when I use recovery, I can bring back some information to these highlights. I wouldn't use too much because otherwise the image could look too underexposed. So I will use a setting like maybe 10 to 20. In this case I will use 20 because it looks okay here. Sometimes you also need the fill light if you have underexposed areas in your image. In this case I don't need it really because my subject is bright enough right now. And you can use blacks to also bring back some contrast, which is maybe not a bad idea here, at least a little bit. You have to be really careful when using black because you can easily get completely black areas otherwise. Okay, let's move on to the next settings here, and a setting I usually use a lot of times and not only for raw images but for any kind of image is a little bit of clarity. This is some kind of unsharp mask which improves a little bit of the overall sharpness of the image. So when you look at it, especially when you resize it and make it smaller, it looks like it's more sharp and has a lot more detail than before. Another setting which might be helpful is vibrance in case you have too oversaturated or desaturated color. In this case I can use a little bit more vibrance if I want to, but in this case I don't need much more because the tiger here has already good colors right now. Okay, now the very important stuff is the details section. So when you process raw images, the raw images usually are not sharpened at all. So it's just what your camera or your camera sensor captures. And they usually have an anti-aliasing filter in front of the sensor, which will smooth the image to reduce moire and other stuff. And you can use the sharpness to make the pixel-based sharpness or the edges more visible again. Of course you can't gain back detail here at this point, but the image as a rule looks just sharper. So I usually use values between 40 to 70 depending on the ISO I shot and the overall scene. In this case a value of 60 should be okay, or maybe a little bit less, maybe just 50 because the ISO was quite high here at this point. Maybe like this. And noise reduction is of course also helpful when you have chosen a too high ISO or you get some noise, especially in dark areas. In this case I don't really need it because I will lose detail when I use it, so I prefer not to use it if possible. But a very important feature is the color noise. The color noise will just reduce the amount of the different color pixels, and our human eyes are not very sensitive to color compared to black and white. But if you see color noise, an image looks very digital and unnatural. If you see normal noise, like just this gray noise, we are used to it from the film times, so we don't see this grainy noise so bad, but we see any color noise really bad. So I usually add some color noise reduction to remove this color noise and just let some gray noise in there in case there is noise. I usually use values around 20 to 30, and in images where I use pretty high ISOs I also go up to 50. But it really depends, but in almost any situation I use at least about 15 to 20. Even if I shoot at ISO 100, because after the sharpening you can easily catch up some color noise even in this low ISO range. What I also recommend you is to use the lens profile in case you can find a suiting lens profile, because it will remove all the distortion and so on. It didn't detect the lens here, but I can check if I can find it here, and I know that this was shot using the 70 to 300, so maybe I can find this lens here. And yeah, the problem is probably, yeah, it's this lens here I didn't use the L lens, I used the normal one, so I can just select it. But the problem is that Photomate cannot use this profile, because this profile is just for APS-C cameras, and my 60 is a full frame camera, so the profile won't fit here. So, but I can at least try to use a similar profile. So I can try to use the 75 to 300. Okay, this is also not supported. Maybe let's try the L lens here and try to enable it and see what it does. Yeah, it basically looks much brighter in the corners now because the vignetting is enabled. You can also manually adjust the vignetting a little bit then after this, in case it's not the actual correct lens, so you at least have the distortion, which is usually quite similar in this kind of lenses here. But of course you can also remove complete some parameters, but in this case the distortion is not really heavy, so I can also, for example, disable the distortion at all here. Okay, so yeah, the other stuff like the gradient filters and circular filters and so on, I personally just use if I really need it, because for this and for regular raw images, these are all the settings I need. So to sum up, you should really check your white balance setting, you should check maybe your contrast, recovery and clarity. You should also check that you have add some sharpness and maybe reduce your color noise. And you should check if you have a lens profile for your camera and your lens. And yeah, that's that. So you're good to go and export this image finally here. So we can export it now, which will take maybe a few seconds. So yeah, that's that for this video. We can look for the final image now. And yeah, I hope that some of these explanations are helpful for you. And have fun editing your raw images then. So let's see what comes out right now here. It's quite a big file, so it may take a few more seconds here, but it should be ready should be ready right now. And yeah, there's our final raw processed images, and as you may already can see, it looks much better than our original raw capture. So yeah, that's that. Have fun using Photomate and see you in the next video. Bye.